So, I recently played Halo Reach, and what could I say about it? Quite a bit actually. I'm giving out my thoughts on this game as a newcomer to the Halo series. Is it good to start off the story with Reach, and does the gameplay and visuals still hold up to this day? Before starting this video, I'd like to say that this is my first video reviewing games that I have recently played, and giving my thoughts on them, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Before Reach, I've never really played through the story of the Halo series, or even fully gotten into the series. I grew up with the PS2 and the PS3 at the time, and my parents were dead set against owning multiple consoles for, well, obvious reasons. Also, I used to be a blind PlayStation fanboy when I was a kid, so naturally I saw Halo as this generic first-person shooter that I couldn't give any less of a damn about. So I never really got to play Halo much as a kid, or experience the golden age of its multiplayer and its story back then. That kinda changed when I built a PC a few years ago, and then bought a Series S recently, so I had at least a few ways of being able to play Halo. Up to this point, I've mainly played a lot of the multiplayer through the MCC, and even though I absolutely sucked trying to play Slayer or Griffball, I still found them to be absolutely fun. But this is why I began to feel more interested in playing the series. Since Reach begins the Halo story timeline, it was an easy pick to begin with. Halo Reach's gameplay is hugely different from your average first-person shooter. The gunplay is so satisfying to nail down, and every weapon feels weighty and powerful enough to shoot down the Covenant, with a long time to kill to boot. It uses a two-weapon system and sticks very strictly to its weapon limits. Compared to other shooters, I found it to be extremely confusing at first, because early in my playthrough, I was constantly just using the same two weapons, being the DMR and the assault rifle, consistently running out of ammo and constantly getting killed. But over time as you play, it becomes very clear as to why it works so well. There are a large array of weapons that you could absolutely just pick up and then blast the literal shit out of enemies around, and certain weapons are there to adapt to enemies' weaknesses. Case in point, the Fuel Rod gun instantly blasts the heck out of an entire group of grunts and elites. The plasma rifles, which can weaken enemies with a shield, but your usual assault rifle can power down your usual grunts. A gravity hammer can even instantly kill anyone within its radius. It also helps that swapping weapons frequently helps you to adapt to the reality that sticking to the usual weapons won't help. Cycling through a whole range of guns could be beneficial to fighting a whole group of Covenant forces. The overwhelming variety of weapons and the sense of adaptability in every firefight makes the two weapon limit so satisfying in Halo Reach. There are also several abilities that you can make use of in Reach. The most notable one is Sprint, which allows you to speed down the environments much faster than your usual pace in Halo. Sprint has mainly felt very debatable throughout the series, and I can totally understand this. In this case, whilst it feels fast and fluid, sprinting itself has some limitations. Whilst you're running down, you can only seem to move around forwards, which really limits the flexibility of the sprint mechanic. Also, I feel like I'm taking this for granted here, coming off from other first-person shooters, but not being able to shoot or throw grenades while sprinting really spoils it for me. Sprint may be enjoyable at first, but it has huge limitations for the gameplay that Halo offers compared to other games. Other power-ups like Hologram and Armor Lockup are there to swap to sprint with, and my personal favourite is Armor Lockup, purely because it makes you literally unstoppable against any type of attack. And during the time that I played through the game, it's also proven to have helped in my favour, since I could easily recover my health in the middle of a firefight whilst feeling utterly invincible. The best thing about Halo Reach's gameplay is that it never makes you feel like you're bored or wanting more out of it. There is so much to do throughout the game, and the overwhelming variety in its gameplay makes it feel fresh and grabs your attention 100%. You have your usual boots on the ground gameplay, jumping into a warthog or a tank, to traverse through the environments of Reach and to blast enemies out of the woodwork, and parts of missions where you could go up to space, yes, literal space, and get into a dogfight against the likes of a Banshee or a Seraph. There are a few turret sections that don't really get much screen time, and flying the Falcon along New Alexandria was wonderful to play through. Beyond the immense amount of weapons, power-ups, enemy variety, and a wide breadth of gameplay segments, Halo Reach's gameplay doesn't tire at all. It's brilliant. Now that I've explained my thoughts on the gameplay, what about the story, you might ask? Naturally, because Reach begins the Halo story from just the games alone, I decided to start off the series from Reach. From what I'm getting at, it represents a long-standing war between humans and a bunch of alien-like forces called the Covenant. You're part of an elite group of Spartans who are given the responsibility to protect Reach from being invaded by the Covenant. On the surface, it felt like a straightforward story to begin with, but over the course of my playthrough, it becomes more than just your average Space Marine shooter or something like that. Teamwork is emphasized heavily within Noble Team, being an elite group sticking together no matter how tough the mission is. They even follow you throughout the story. Although a lot of people see Noble Team as this faceless, emotionless group of Spartans, they have their own set of hero moments at some point during the campaign, like when George decides to sacrifice himself to destroy a large Covenant ship, or in the last mission of the game, Lone Wolf, you're left to fend for yourself to survive against a large onslaught of Covenant forces. The biggest thing about the story for me is how utterly dark and hopeless Reach is. Humanity is fighting a ruthlessly losing battle against the Covenant, and whilst they're just mowing down tons and tons and tons of aliens, rescuing civilians, and even trying to disrupt the enemy's own ships, things are just bleak for Noble Team. Reach really emphasizes that no matter the hard work, fate's already written for the future of the planet, humanity's lost, and I absolutely enjoyed how that story was portrayed. What I didn't enjoy is how badly the game explains all of these events. What is Noble Team's actual purpose? Why are humans fighting the Covenant in this long war? Where's the context of all of those events? I'm like, what the hell's going on? Coming into Halo, it just felt extremely confusing as to what was happening. Maybe this could better be explained in the lore or in the other games in the series, but yeah, for much of the story its events aren't properly explained, and for a newcomer like me, I just found it to be confusing. There are about 12 missions in the game, and most of them last around 30 to 40 minutes or so. I finished the game within 6 hours, and whilst that is short, I don't seem to mind the length considering the wide gameplay variety Reach offers along with its story. It doesn't overstay its welcome at all, but its replay value is astonishingly big. Firefight is also immensely fun, and co-op definitely fits a focus on having a good ass time with friends, though I finished the entire game in solo, which is fine I guess, but it doesn't detract from the whole experience. Rather, it helps focus on the overarching story of the game. As for visuals, I'll just keep it short and sweet. It still holds up brilliantly playing at 120 FPS on the Xbox Series S. So, what do I think of Halo Reach and starting out the series as a newcomer? Is it welcoming to people wanting to get into the Halo series and its story? Yes and no. Reach provides a decent balance between classic and modern mechanics in the franchise. It's a more methodical shooter providing the best of what the series has to offer, like its 2 weapon system, the wide variety of gameplay from dogfights to blasting off Covenant with a tank, to the more divisive but welcome additions like power-ups such as Sprint being the most notable. I personally liked a lot of the classic game mechanics in Reach, and some of the power-ups such as jetpacks and armor lock, but Sprint itself leaves a lot to be desired with the limited movement it offers. The story itself has some really hard-hitting moments, but it doesn't explain the context of what's really happening, and for a newcomer, it may be confusing to follow the story at times. In short, Halo Reach holds up brilliantly as a way to start playing this series with its solid gameplay, replay value, and visuals, but its story is told in a simple yet confusing way. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like or subscribe, it'd be really appreciated. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.